In Singapore, the Health Ministry announced 2 more cases on Tuesday night, taking the total number here to 110. Now, case 110 has links to the Wisland Technologies cluster. Meanwhile, contact tracing is underway for case 109, who had gone to work at Fish Mart Sakuraya in West Coast Plaza before he was admitted to hospital. But he had not served customers or handled food. The ministry also announced that no new patients were discharged, meaning the number of fully recovered people remains at 78. 7, though, are in critical condition. Overseas, Air New Zealand has confirmed a case on a February 25th flight from Singapore to Auckland. The female patient then travelled from Auckland to Palmerston North a few days later on March 2nd before returning to Auckland on the same day. Contact tracing underway involving passengers who were on the same Singapore service as well as the 2 regional flights. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has cited concerns for the 3 countries, Italy, Iran and South Korea, which have seen a spike in cases and are struggling to manage them. The WHO is also concerned about the pressure this virus puts on healthcare systems, even in countries with resilient systems in place. Over in the US, the death toll stands at 9 and the number of infected cases has surpassed 100. Cases in Italy continue to climb as well, with more than 2,500 people infected and 79 dead. But in China, the number of new cases fell for a 3rd straight day. The country reported 119 new cases on Tuesday, down slightly from 125 cases on Monday and 202 cases on Sunday. Meanwhile, South Korea saw 516 new cases, bringing the total number of infected cases to over 5,300. The death toll in South Korea stands at 32. President Moon Jae-in today announced a stimulus package of 11.7 trillion won, or 13.7 billion Singapore dollars, to cushion the impact of the outbreak. Subject to parliamentary approval, the supplementary budget will channel money to South Korea's healthcare system, childcare and outdoor markets. Now, to tell us more about the situation in South Korea is South Korea correspondent Chang Choon. Choon, nice to see you again. Now, a stimulus package of 11.7 trillion won. Now, can you elaborate on it?
Okay, this is the largest ever supplementary budget that South Korea has drawn up to fight infectious disease. It's bigger than the money that was put out for the SARS outbreak in 2003 and the MERS outbreak in 2015. So it was drawn up today. It will be submitted tomorrow, and they hope to pass it by March 17th. The money will go into areas such as enhancing the quarantine systems nationwide, establishing hospitals specialized in epidemics, and then also establishing research institutes that will focus on studying viruses. It will also go into providing financial support for hospitals, supporting the living costs of coronavirus patients who have to be quarantined for a very long time. And then it will also go into supporting SMEs that are suffering because of this outbreak. The government will, give out loans to these SMEs. And then the money will also go into disinfecting schools and public spaces. And they have also drawn up a budget for to help the low-income families and the elderly. They will issue like vouchers to about 5 million of these people over the next 4 months.
Now, Choon, President Moon has also apologized for the shortage of masks. Now, how have they attempted to alleviate this?
Now public anger is really growing over this issue because people are queuing up early in the morning. Now it's winter, so you can imagine how cold it is. They're queuing in the morning to buy masks, only to be told later on when the shops open that the stocks have not arrived or is already sold out. So President Moon has ordered the government to support manufacturers by securing raw materials for the manufacturers. South Korea has about 140 manufacturers for masks, and they can produce 10 million masks a day. 10% is for export, and then about 5 million will go, into the stores to be sold to the public. But you're not seeing this supplies in the streets because people are buying and hoarding. So the government is still trying to figure out what is the best way to manage this situation and how to distribute the masks fairly. They also want to distribute masks for free in Daegu. But it remains to be seen how they will do this. Meanwhile, people have taken the matters into their own hands. So they are doing things like reusing the mask, or they make their own. And then China actually sent 500,000 masks to Korea. It arrived yesterday. This is reciprocating South Korea's goodwill gesture much earlier.
Now, Mei Choon, let's focus on the topic of travel bans for a moment. Now, more than 90 countries have imposed entry bans and quarantine requirements on visitors from South Korea. Singapore is no exception, with the ban starting tonight. Now, what has the public reaction been to these restrictions?
I think Koreans generally understand that there's a need for these bans, because South Korea's numbers are really shooting higher and higher. They know that it's inevitable, and South Korea would have done the same to protect its own people if the same happened. But people are upset at a few things. They're upset at how fast China banned South Korea, whereas when South Korea didn't have so many cases, they actually deliberated over the decision to ban Chinese tourists for a very long time, and in the end, they only banned those who have been to Hubei. Koreans are also upset when they hear stories about Korean people overseas being treated badly. Yesterday there was this picture of Koreans being locked up in a quarantine room that is like a prison cell, and people hope that Koreans can get more respect when they are overseas and this happens. There is also growing fears of racism against Korean people, especially among Koreans who are studying and living overseas. The picture of a Singaporean student who was beaten up in London, that picture actually was much circulated in Facebook in Korea as well.
Now, Mei Choon, let's just to end off, let's talk about the decision to push back the reopening of schools by a further 2 weeks. Schools will now reopen on March 23rd. Now, is delaying it by 2 weeks enough?
The reason why they delayed it to March 23rd is because there was a sudden spike in the number of patients below 19, and these patients are your students mainly. So there are more than 200 cases now. The government is worried that if you open schools, right, infections can spread very, very quickly in the schools. Also, the experts expect that the outbreak will start subsiding 2 months after the first case. So the first case in Korea was January 20th, which means that it should start subsiding March 20th, which makes March 23rd, which makes the reopening of schools on March 23rd a good day. But if the situation does not improve, I would think the government will push it back some more.
Well, thanks for taking the time to speak with us, Mei Choon. Do stay safe. Now, that was South Korea correspondent Chang Mei Choon with the latest. Now, keep up to date with developments in South Korea at straitstimes.com.